Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
I'm awake.
Good.
Got more ideas than Carter has liver pills.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not a bad thing.
No. Well, it is bad because at 4:30 in the morning, you're saying, well, I want to do this and this and this and this, and then going back to sleep and then trying to remember what it was that you were thinking about at 4 o'clock in the morning.
You know, I solved that problem for myself many years ago by I keep a pen and a couple of pencils and a sketchbook next to my bed. That way, when I wake up, you know, in the middle of the night, and I've got an idea, I can turn on the light, do a little sketch, you know, just write some notes, whatever I was thinking about, you know, close the book up, put it back on the bedstand, turn out the light again, go back to sleep.
Well, that's good. That might be, that turns it off, whatever it is you were thinking about, long enough for you to get back to sleep. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I usually, you know, didn't take more than like 5 or 10 minutes, you know, to get something down in the book. So it's not like I was up for a long time and had trouble, you know, really falling back to sleep again.
Yeah.
I found that quite helpful, actually, because, you know, there was a period of time in my life where when I was very young, in my 20s, you know, in particular, 20s and 30s, I used to dream paintings.
Okay.
No, seriously, I would. It's like I could see myself doing, you know, dream of doing this painting and kind of, you know, get it to the finished, you know, thing and see it in my dream. And what I found out is, you know, if I didn't wake up and sketch it out and make a note, by the time I woke up in the morning, I'd forgotten it.
It's gone. Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, rather than lose that, you know, like I said, I just started keeping the sketchbook next to my bed with a couple of pens and pencils. And that, you know, that really helped me create a lot of the work, you know, that I've done in my life. You know, now some of it is very strange and bizarre and has, you know, I have like no idea why that particular image popped into my head, but you know, some of them I've chosen not to follow through and do, but I've usually at least sketched them out, you know, and that way I've got some kind of record of, you know, whatever mental disorder is going on in my head.
Join the club. Good morning.
Yeah, how you doing? So, you know, if they ever do sit down and want to really psychoanalyze, you know, what was wrong with me, they can go back and look at those sketchbooks, you know, kind of figure it out. It's like, oh, okay. Anyway, how you doing, Armando?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. I went and I got my frozen food yesterday.
You got your what?
Frozen food.
Oh, okay.
At the center.
Okay. How did that work?
You just go there and then come and they hand it to you a bag with the frozen food.
Yeah. Okay. That's your just for the day, right?
I can go every day.
Right. Yeah. You go each day and pick up a lunch, yeah, or something, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of your food for the day.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And did you pay them or what? How did that work?
No, it's absolutely free.
Just free. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's good that they're continuing to do that while they try to figure out, I guess, you know, how they're gonna maybe in a little bit longer term work that out. So
in the label said that the food is packed by Open Hand.
Yeah.
That group.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that in the meeting they were having some kind of discussion about where the food was coming from and what they can't do because they have to charge for it because it's part of the contract any of the food from Piccadilly, they've got to charge you for. If it's from Open Hand, then it's, you know, a free food distribution. Yeah.
Mhm.
But now it wasn't like prepared. So all you had to do was heat it up and it's ready to eat. It's stuff that you,
Yeah,
yes.
it's like a TV dinner. You just take it in the microwave and that's it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, because for some reason I was under the impression that if it came from Open Hand, it was like the basic stuff that you could then take and make your dinner with. You know, it wasn't like already prepared. But okay, so it's actually prepared food.
Yes.
Okay, well that's good because yeah, you know, I know there's a couple of us who have talked about this before, and some people are definitely opposed to even trying to cook. You know, they just want it. Hey, I warm it up, it's ready to go. You know?
But then that program is not available to everyone, is it?
Yes.
I think
I
so.
don't ask you name, nothing. They didn't ask me my
I
name.
never got any notification about that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was wondering if Bowden is doing it also.
I'm pretty sure, if I may, I'm pretty sure that all of the centers are doing it.
Oh, okay.
And I think all you have to do is just call the center
Mhm.
and, you know, talk to somebody there and ask them about the times and the process that they're going through. And I don't know that you have to sign up on a list or anything like that. You know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but they can tell you that. And then, you know, just, hey, you know, do the drive-through, pick it up.
Yeah, get out of, it's an excuse to get out of the house.
Well, it's an excuse to get out of the house, plus you get a meal, you know, and you can avoid going to like, you know, heavily populated areas like grocery stores and stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and
Well, I
right
go
now,
early. If I usually try to go at around 8, so it's
uh,
usually not really crowded. Grocery store is not really crowded at 8 in the morning.
yeah, but still, I mean, there's, you know, you're making a lot of contact with a lot of different people, you know.
Mhm. That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
and if you're kind of wanting to try to avoid that, then, you know, this is a good alternative.
So how did you hear about it, Armando?
Ronnie called me. They call me all the time, the center, for any reason.
Mhm.
Yeah, they'll probably call me too, but I probably didn't listen to the voicemail or something.
Right, yeah, yeah. Well, I know that Ron gets lonely, so he, you know, he calls a lot of people.
A lot of people, a lot of time, too often.
But the gym is not open yet, so.
What was that last part?
The gym is not open yet.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I was saying, you know, no, yeah, they don't want anybody in that building. They don't want us.
You
in
know,
the building.
there's a exercise class and dance classes on Zoom too, you know.
I say,
Sorry,
yeah.
what?
Zoom, there's exercise classes, dance classes, you know,
Mhm.
aerobics.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were, well, at Benson, and I don't know about all the centers, okay, but I do know at Benson, they were having actual on-site like aerobics classes and stuff, but they had
Mhm.
very small numbers, like, you know,
Yeah.
maybe,
I was there. I saw that. There was one person in the class.
okay, well,
Oh, that sounds good.
yeah, I've seen where they had like 4 or 5 people, but they were pretty spread out. And then the
Mhm.
instructor was up on, you know, at the front.
Yeah.
And you know, what everybody saw was the instructor. They didn't see any of the participants. Because the camera was pointed toward her and she was
Yeah.
doing the exercises, but she actually had people in the room working with her. And so,
Right.
and then if you're on Zoom, I would imagine you would just kind of follow along. So, you know, I probably need a few of those exercise classes.
Yeah, I got to get back. I was very good when I first got on Zoom, but then you encouraged or taking all my time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, at least I know what I'm getting blamed for, you know? Okay. All right.
Yeah. I blame the two of you for not having enough time to paint. That's my excuse.
Huh? I missed what you said.
I said, my excuse is I blame both of them for not having enough time to do any painting.
Yeah, because you're doing all the painting. You said, I want to call this morning because I want to finish this painting, you know.
Yeah, well, he's attending so many classes every day that, you know, he doesn't have any time to paint.
That's my excuse.
No, well, mine wasn't attending, mine is painting itself, you know.
John, here's my
Yes.
answer.
Yes, I see you playing, yes. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, all right, good. Glad you got that. Okay, so let's get into today, because we've got, man, we have a lot of stuff to look at and a lot of stuff to talk about. And, you know, we're going to look at a couple of artists, but I'm going to kind of have that to the back end of the class, because what this all comes down to, and it's all Bob's fault. Okay, everybody point at Bob. Bob, it's your fault.
Okay, well, I'll hang my head in shame.
No, actually, you should hold your head up and be proud about yourself. You know, because I was kind of thinking about, okay, what am I going to focus on? And, you know, because Bob kind of took that direction to do that little pointless painting, we started talking about, you know, that particular aspect of that movement of the Impressionist, you know, painters who kind of practice pointillism. But, you know, it wasn't just the Impressionists, you know, there was a group of people called Neo-Impressionists, okay? And the reason they called them that is that they were not in France. They weren't hanging out in the cafes, but they were looking at a lot of the work that these French painters were doing. And then they were kind of emulating the ideas of it, of Impressionism, okay? And so some of them were in, you know, Belgium, Germany, you know, Netherlands, places like that. But what this all came down to was the very beginning, and remember when this happened, this was sort of the mid 1800s, right? There was a big shift in society to start looking at science, you know, and particularly things like, you know, the ideas of gravity, you know, and in as far as art goes, you know, optics, you know, how do we see, you know, why do we see the way that we do, right? And so it really got into this whole thing of optics and what light, you know, what light actually does, right? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit on the front end today, and then we're going to look at that and sort of relate that to the artwork that we're looking at and what they were doing, you know, as they were doing it. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is I'm going to share a fairly short video. It's about 12 minutes, I think. It's talking about color strategy. Okay. And I think you'll enjoy it. I hope. Let's see. And then we're going to look at a lot of charts and graphs that all came from like that. I know you'll be crazy about that, right? All right. We'll shift to select multiple windows. I just want one. There we go. We're going to move that over and we're going to open it up. I'm on my very slow computer, so it takes time, sorry.
Yeah.
And away we go.
The impact of color on art. What's one of the most powerful communicators of emotion in the artist's tool chest? Imagine some of the world's masterpieces without color, and pretty quickly you'll realize its importance and its skillful use. For this reason, it's very important to study color strategies. And it all begins with a study of light and its relationship to color. The study of light actually dates all the way back to the time of Aristotle, who suggested that all color comes from black and white, or darkness and lightness, and that it was a gift from God in the form of rays of light. Scientific understanding slowly advanced over time, taking a big leap forward in the mid-1600s during the time of Isaac Newton. When he was only 23, and while in seclusion during a bubonic plague outbreak, Newton experimented with light and found that a ray of white light is actually made up of 7 individual colors. How did he figure this out? Newton had isolated a single beam of sunlight by making a small hole in his window shutter. He then placed a prism in the path of the resulting ray of light, and when the light came out of the opposite end of the prism, it had bent and broken up into 7 distinct colors. Newton called this range of colors the visible light spectrum. We often remember it with the fictitious name Roy G. Biv. It refers to red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. After identifying and charting the dominant colors in the spectrum, he noticed that the 2 extreme ends had related hues. This led him to connect those ends, producing a circular model and what would later be called a color wheel. Newton's color wheel was based on colored light and only used those colors found on the visible light spectrum. But a few decades earlier, a different color system was being established as well. This was the primary color system used by artists, and it was based on pigments, not light. At its core were the 3 artists' primaries, red, yellow, and blue. The painter's color wheel begins by plotting these same 3 colors, which are then mixed together in sets to create what are called secondary colors. Then, 1 primary is mixed with 1 secondary to create what we call a tertiary color. These resulting colors are often hyphenated names, such as yellow-green. The completed color wheel can then be used to develop color strategies when painting. And there are several common strategies that have been used by some of the masters throughout history. Let me show you. To begin with, we need to learn how to examine a painting for color. When you look at a painting, you try to step back and take an all-over view of the piece, identifying the main colors or hues. Don't worry about subtle tones and values. Think general color. Identify those that jump out, and then look at their placement on the color wheel. It's always interesting to see how those colors were used. Your colors may be shaded with black, tinted with white, or toned down by a hint of another color. Try to look beyond those factors and choose where on the color wheel they match up best. It doesn't have to be perfect, just get close. Here's another example. In this wonderful piece by McEwen, you can see that the 2 main colors are red and green. Really, almost all the colors in the piece, other than grays and whites, are variations on red and green. So if you take away the gray and white, and then plot the red and green on the color wheel, even though they're very muted, you can see that they're complementary colors. This helps you see that there was thought behind the color planning. But it's also important to know that there are times when an artist doesn't strategize at all. They simply paint what they see in nature. And this often works out fine because the colors in nature are never off and they never conflict. It's one of the reasons artists throughout history have intensely studied nature. But there are plenty of times when you'll want to make adjustments, whether to achieve an effect or to communicate a feeling. And this is where knowledge of color strategies will be especially valuable. As we look through various master paintings, you'll notice that there are a lot of grays and neutral tones. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to consider neutrals, grays, browns, white, and black, as supporting colors, those colors used to build the painting, but not a direct part of the color strategy. Unless the chosen colors themselves are neutral, in which case they are the strategy, or at least a part of it. Grays and browns accentuate chromatic colors, so when they're included, It's a way to tone down the scene or to accentuate a chromatic color. Whites and blacks are used for value and to communicate feeling. They too help make chromatic colors pop, or they give viewers visual rest. So when we look at a master painting or plan our own pieces, our color strategies are based mostly on the chromatic colors, those from the color wheel or spectrum, with neutrals used to support. Now let's take a look at several of the main color strategies and some masterpieces from history that appear to use them. We'll begin with the simplest color scheme, a single color or a monochromatic painting. Compositions that use a monochromatic color scheme use variations on that color, tints and shades. You use variations in chroma and value. Although I don't usually count black, white, or neutral tones when evaluating color schemes, since they tend to act as support, as I said, here's a case where white is the main color. This is a monochromatic piece by Klimt, featuring white tones and a touch of black to establish the focal point. And then you have the quintessential monochrome painting by Monet. Clearly, this piece features mostly tones of blue for a very tranquil effect. Blue, remember, is a tranquil color itself, then used alone almost with a tranquil composition, and it brings home the feeling. Although a monochromatic painting could be in almost any color, the one that appears to be used most often is red, as you can see in these two paintings. There are also color schemes based on two colors, a dyadic color scheme, dyad meaning two parts. The dominant colors are derived from two colors that sit exactly opposite on the color wheel, called complementary colors. This Renaissance era painting initially looks like it's monochromatic, but the necklace is actually a complement. Together with the skin tone, it subtly balances the dominant green. Here's another very subtle use of complements, red and green, a gorgeous piece by Sargent. Notice all the tonal variations. Both colors are subdued and muted, giving it a very earthy feel that's pleasing to the eye. And here's another subtle complementary color scheme, this time in warm blue and a pale peach. Black helps establish the focal point, but the color scheme is a soft complement for visual interest without too much punch. But notice the feeling that warm blue, almost an aqua, gives the wintry scene. It's an interesting choice of color. Friedrich's painting of a girl staring out a window is another good dyad. I love this piece. And notice the wonderful balanced use of green and gold, although there's quite a bit of orange at the base. Still, I think we can place this one in the dyadic category. Colors can also be selected in groups of three. These are called triadic color schemes, by meaning three. There are several ways to pick triads. First, the colors can be equidistant from each other, such as the use of three primaries. Or you can use a thinner triangle, referring to what we call a split complement. There's also something called a split analogous. This piece, created in the 1400s by Fra Angelico, is a great example of a triad, a split complement. Notice how he strategically places the boldest color, the orange, around the piece. It's very balanced, and the combination of the orange with gold and then well-placed blue complements makes the piece both pleasing and interesting to look at. This sweet little piece was painted by David in the 1500s. Here the artist uses a primary color triad. Blue is the dominant color, but David uses gold in the grasses and a touch of red to balance the color scheme. There is green in the trees, so it could qualify as a tetrad, but to me the main colors, the primary ones, are blue, gold, and red, a triad. This painting also features a primary triad, but in this case, Van Dyck uses it in a much more subtle manner. First of all, the white was selected for the Virgin, most likely to convey a sense of purity. The supporting colors make up a soft, gentle triad as well. Notice the toned down reds, blues, and yellows. It gives it a peaceful feeling. Another way to handle three colors is to create an analogous color scheme, where the three colors are adjacent. Analogous color schemes can involve 3, 4, or even 5 colors that are adjacent. They're all related in a sense, so they communicate a serenity and peacefulness. These are the calm and restful color schemes, such as the landscape we see here. I love this one. It's a beautifully rendered piece, and the 3 related colors that make up the bulk of the painting are really nice together. A gentle blue, muted green, and a pale gold. Notice how they create a natural, tranquil feeling. And how about this piece, painted on the internals of a grand piano? This piano was in the White House during the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s. It was painted by Thomas Dewing and features primarily muted but strong green, a very muted yellow, and a pale muted red. Subdued analogous colors that feel very harmonious together. And note their warmth. The colors sit towards the warm end of the spectrum, and together they feel warm. As opposed to this piece, another tranquil scene, but this time with a cool feeling. All of these analogous colors were selected from the cool side of the spectrum, giving the piece a harmonious but cool presentation. And finally, let's look at an analogous color scheme that features green as the dominant color, so you can see how that color impacts the viewer. Remember, green communicates a feeling of nature. Do you think the color scheme helps communicate that? The table appears to be a slightly cooler, much darker version of the orange in the fruit, but it works nicely. The dark value sets off the other colors. There are other color schemes that use 4 color groupings, and these are referred to as tetradic. There's a tetradic square, a tetradic rectangle, and a tetradic complement. Notice how each one is balanced. And we can see it pretty clearly in this painting by Caravaggio. Red dominates and is supported by muted, smaller sections of gold, green, and blue. It's balanced and works well with the composition. A 4-color design can also be a tetradic complement. And the example I have for you is what I think is an astonishing piece from the mid-1400s. In an era where almost all the paintings feature a similar look and a similar color scheme, this artist breaks the mold and gives us this warm blue and orange painting, really outside the box. And if you've taken my brush strokes class, you'll appreciate the early use of impasto, as you can see in this image.
That's the key.
A tetrad can also be very subtle, as in this piece by Turner. Turner was a student of color, so you know his choices in expression were intentional. Do you see the soft, muted blue, green, red, and yellow? Visually pleasing, but so soft that it keeps things subdued. And finally, this wonderful piece by Homer. At first glance, it appears to be monochromatic, but when you really examine it, you find red and orange and green and blue. The blue is very minimal, but it's in a significant position in her dress. So this, in my opinion, would be a rectangular tetrad. And take note of the color placement, the use of value contrast, and the use of chroma contrast. Bold, pure color surrounded by toned color. They're used to lead the eye. And as always, there are plenty of examples in art of masters who used color schemes that don't line up with what we've just studied. These are perfect examples to teach us that rules in art are guidelines. We can work with rules, but we can also think outside the box. Not every design has to fall into a neat heading. If a color scheme works in your eyes, go for it. The importance of this is seen in the work of El Greco, whose colors are really different from anybody in his time. It makes his work stand out. If you enjoyed this presentation, you may like my 3-hour online class on understanding color, where we take an in-depth look at color theory and
All right. Okay, what's going on? There we go. All right. What'd you guys think of that?
That was a
Didn't know
lot
it.
in a short period of time.
That was a lot in a short period of time. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
we-
was,
Terrific, but a lot to take in.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know I needed that class until I actually saw it. I thought, wow, I need this. I need that.
Okay. Well, guess what?
What?
It ain't over yet.
Uh-oh.
But before we move on, can you tell me where I can find that one?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. And
YouTube.
it's basically just the video is called Color Strategies.
Color Strat. Got it.
Color Strategy in Art by Jill Poyard, Poyerd.
Okay.
What's the last name again?
Poyard, Poyerd, Jill.
Got it. Okay, I'll be watching that. Let's see.
So Charles, are we going to be tested over this later?
No. No, but you will get a verbal tongue lashing from this point forward if you guys mess up in art speak, as far as what a tint, what a tone, and what a shade are, okay? Because many of you, everything is, it's some kind of tone. Well, is it? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a tint or a shade, and you have to know what those are. And we'll talk about those, okay? So that way you can get it right.
Actually, on your color wheel, you have all that, but without the explanation, it didn't really mean a lot to me. I just had tertiary colors, primary colors, secondary colors, but now I see how they actually relate to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we're gonna look at more of that.
Good deal.
Okay.
May,
All right.
may I ask you something?
Of course, Armando, that's what we're here for. Yeah.
No, but it's related. My computer keep telling me that my network bandwidth is low.
Oh,
I don't know what that means.
well, that means that you're not getting a good internet connection.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with Zoom. It just has to do with maybe in your area or something, maybe some of the towers are
Uh-huh.
in trouble, or maybe the weather isn't good over there, and so you're not getting.
But you're coming too clear to us, though.
Yeah.
But the screen got got a little bit smaller now,
No, it did. Okay.
but I still can see you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So anyway, from here, I've got a very short little video that's kind of fun. It's an animation. Okay. And we're getting ready to jump off into the deep end of the pool here. Okay. And this is only about, it's less than a minute. Okay. But just watch
minute?
what happens with this. And we're going to watch it a couple of times. Okay.
I'm gonna say good grief.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll have to, because it's it's one of those things that it's hard to pick up. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, it's this one, right? Right? Yay, we got the right one. I'm so happy, when it actually, works. Okay, now, like I said, yeah, this is like 20 seconds, okay? But now it's stopped, it's paused, okay? So let me kind of set this up for you so that you get an idea, okay? Now, what this is demonstrating is both additive and subtractive color, okay? And I'll get into explaining exactly what those are, but basically think of it this way. Additive color is light, okay? It's what you would get if you shined, you know, 3 different lights, say a red, a blue, and a green, which are it's called RGB. It's the same thing that you're looking at when you're looking at your computer screen and or a TV screen, you know, and all of the colors that are on your monitor are made up out of little pixels that are either red, blue, or green, okay? No yellow, okay? Not yellow. It's just RGB, okay? And that's an additive color process, okay? Now in pigment, right, we have what we call subtractive, right? And that color system is based on your primary colors, right? Red, blue, and yellow. Okay. But now watch what happens in this animation. And I'll just point this out. Notice up here, these are the sources of the light, and this tells you which light is which. So over here's the blue, over here's the red, over here's the green, right? And they're shining on this sphere that's kind of floating out there in space. And then what's happening is you see the light's going past the ball and it's casting a shadow, you know, on this surface, right? So this is a gray or, you know, a dark area because no light's getting to that area. You just see the light on the outside. So watch what happens.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Now you see as they begin to change position and come together, what
They
ends
make
up happening with those 3 light sources is that they combine and they create what we call white light or daylight, okay? That's what's happening out there in the world, okay? Now, as they merge together, notice that in the center, when you mix those, see, this is the additive part, the light. This is the subtractive, in other words, pigment, okay? And this is the effect of what pigment will do, right? So as these merge together, when you get all 3 of them combined, you create black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's important to know, okay? Because when you're starting to try to figure out what you're actually seeing, you know, whether you're indoors, you know, painting a still life, or you're painting a figure, or you're outdoors and painting, you know, a landscape, the way light reacts on objects is really important, okay? Now, one of the things I want to point out to you here, and I wish I could blow this up bigger. All right, you've got the 3 additive light sources, red, blue, and green, okay? And look what happens on this white sphere, okay? Now, notice that, does that sphere feel 3-dimensional to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's why, okay? Because this is really in reality, it's very simplified, but this is actually what happens. Okay, notice, because you've got the 3 different light sources, where they all come together, you get white light, okay? Now notice that, and we call this the highlight, right? And then right above that, you'll notice the color shifts just a little bit, okay? It seems to be almost as bright as the highlight, but it's not quite. But the thing is, it changes and the temperature gets warmer, doesn't it? See, it's a little bit, almost kind of yellow or orange, just a little bit, right? Where there's like no yellow or orange right in here, up here there is, right? And as it moves around the sphere, right, to this side it gets a little bit kind of pink or purple, right? Kind of reddish. On this side, it gets a little bit bluish, right? Greenish here. And then kind of, more neutral or gray, right in the center as these two kind of merge together. And then you get this thing called the shadow, right? So you've got, on the light side, you've got light, which is the whole thing. You've got highlight, right? As well, okay? And so you get, two things. You get light and highlight. But there's different parts even within the light area. You've got warmer and cooler areas because, and the thing I want to get across to you, this is really kind of, it's hard to wrap your head around, okay? Is that to actually turn form effectively, what we really concentrate on is value, how light or how dark something is. But you have to go beyond that. If you're really going to make something feel dimensional, you have to deal with not only the value, but also the intensity of the color and the temperature of it, okay? And if you get all three of those right, then something looks, actually three-dimensional for you. If you only have two of them, it kind of looks round, but not really, but when you get all three of those right, then it really begins to feel like it's got some volume and weight to it, okay? Now, you can also apply that to things like, when we talk about in landscape, right? If you're landscape painting, you need all three of those. You need value, the contrast in value, but you also need the contrast in temperature, whether areas are generally warmer or cooler, and how they kind of work against each other to push something either back or forward, in the picture plane, right? And you also need intensity, which will do the same thing, help you either push something forward or push something back. The more muted things are, and the closer that they are to each other in intensity, the further back they'll sit in the painting. The more contrast, a bright area against, a muted area will move forward. Okay, so wherever you have more contrast in the painting is going to be the part close to you, right? So if you look at this sphere, right in this area, you got the most contrast. And so right in here seems to be the area that's closest to us, right? Where back here at the edge, even though it's lighter, it seems a little further away, right? Same thing down here, see? It's a little bit further away, where again, this area right here seems to be the thing that's closest to us. And so it's an optical illusion. We know that our screen here is flat, but because of the change in value, intensity, and temperature on this sphere, as demonstrated, it feels three-dimensional to us. Okay, it fools our eye to thinking that something has actually got volume and weight to it, that it actually takes up space. All right. Anybody got any questions about that?
Good info.
Okay. But yeah, that's a hard concept to get across to people. And I'm speaking from personal experience because, when I graduated from the Academy of Art, I thought I knew what they were talking about. 10, 15 years later, I looked at that, what they were telling me and drilled into my head. I looked at it in a totally different way. It took me a long time to really grasp these basic concepts. And the quicker you get these, the more it's radically going to change your ability to paint and to get, sort of the effect in your paintings that you want. Okay. So it's pretty important. All right. So now we've shared that. Yeah, I want that back so I can close it. See, little by little.
We
you know.
don't, but we only saw 12 seconds. We didn't see the whole 20 seconds, did we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
Oh,
we
no.
saw it twice. Yeah, I played it through twice.
Okay.
And, I stopped it at certain points because I really wanted to point,
Mhm.
certain things out to you guys. Okay. All right. So all that being said, okay, does everybody feel like they're in math class right now?
A little.
Yeah, kind of. It's a little bit overwhelming. Okay. Anybody need to like step away from the computer, take a few deep breaths, get a cup of coffee, something like that? Okay. Let me know. It's fine. All right. So we're gonna charge on. Okay. So I got this little presentation that I'm gonna put together with you.
And you blame me for this morning. Thank you, sir.
Well, you instigated it.
Not blame, congratulate.
Yes, and I gave you credit for it actually.
That's
Okay.
right.
Because it opened the door.
I
It's
love
really-
it. I love it. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah, a really, really good door actually. So
Yeah.
okay, so I'm going to open this up. Now these are little images that I downloaded off of the internet. Okay, and then I went back through and I made color notes and numbered them so that they would kind of be in order. Okay, so here you have it. Okay, welcome to the color wheel. Right now,
Charles,
yes.
maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I start taking classes with you, I think we did that in our class. You start to mix color, and I remember that.
Yes, you did. So this is a little bit of a refresher for you, okay? So
Mhm.
it should make a little more sense to you each time you hear it, okay? Now, this particular color wheel, right? Normally, when you look at a color wheel, it's just sort of a round and you get a green, yellow, blue, right? This is actually what it's called a Munsell color
Well.
wheel, right? So not only is it color, but he's varying the value and the intensity of the color at the same time. See, less intense, a little bit darker, right? More intense as it moves inward and lighter. Okay, so that's the Munsell color wheel, right? And one of the things that I used to always do at the very beginning of my classes when I was doing like private classes, before we did anything else, I had everybody do a color wheel. And I wouldn't say a color wheel, a color chart, all right? And I had them take each of the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors and break them into a range of value, 0 to 10. So now this is not 10 steps in value. So we would end up, everything on the outside here would look almost black, okay? Because we did the full range of value from dark to light in each one of the primaries, secondaries, and tertiaries, right? And if you haven't ever done that before, I would highly recommend that you try doing that. It's not easy. And, the first thing, set up an accurate color scale, from 0 to 10, black to white, with all the 10, steps in between in gray.
I found it.
And then with each color, try to mix those colors in the appropriate value. Okay.
I found it.
Okay, good. All right. So that was the color wheel. Okay. Now this is kind of the same thing. It's kind of the color wheel, but now what we're looking at is in effect, the additive color system, which is over here on the left. And remember, additive is talking about light, right? So we're talking about red, blue, and green light. And you combine them, mix them together. And when you have equal amounts of each, what you get is white light, okay? If you have a little less of one than the other, you might get yellow, you might get purple, you might get blue, okay? Now, The one that we deal with all the time as artists, or we deal with the one over here to the right. Okay, and this is called the subtractive color mixing system, right? So we take, you know, our primaries, right? Red, blue, and yellow, and we begin to combine those. And if you combine them all together, you get black. You know, if you have more red and blue, you get purple. If you have more red and yellow, you get orange. If you have, you know, I mean, it's, you know, you get your primaries, secondaries, and tertiaries. Okay. Now, I don't really agree with the colors that they came up with here. You know, you get a green. Yeah, it's kind of odd. You know, I would have had this out here, and you would have gotten a purple kind of in here. Let's look at this one. Maybe blow it up. Again, subtractive color system. Okay. And again, where they overlap, you see you make black. Now, interestingly enough, with a subtractive color system, you can't make white. You know, you can't make it, you can't mix it, okay? You also can't mix red, and you can't mix blue, and you can't mix yellow. You know, you've got to start with those, and then you can make your secondary colors, and then from your secondary colors, you can make your tertiary colors, right? So what we're going to talk about now, okay, now that you have a basic idea of the color system, then we're going to look at what happens when you start combining colors together and how you combine them together. So the next slide here is a good example of a technique that we refer to a lot. It's called scumbling, right? It's where if you take a broken or an open paint passage of one color and you lay it over another. All right, and when you look at that, just look at it for a minute. Now the color in the middle, okay? What do you see there? Okay, if it's yellow to the right and it's blue to the left, what's the color in the middle?
Scumble,
Huh? Well,
scumble.
it's got a texture to it, but now just kind of
Right.
squint your eye down just a little bit. And do you see it
A little bit
turning?
green,
Huh?
a little green.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
green.
Green, but it does look like yellow and blue.
Yeah, well,
It
if,
looks
yeah, if you
distinctly
stay,
yellow.
yeah, if you stay close to the monitor and keep your eyes wide open, it will remain to look yellow and blue. If you just squint your eye down just a little bit, see, all of a sudden it begins to turn green.
I don't see the green.
I don't see it.
Squint your eye down.
But if you look way over to the left where your
Yeah.
examples are, you really see the green.
Just squint your
Yeah,
eye
I see
down
that.
just a little bit.
I see the blue and the yellow.
Yeah, but if you squint down, that center part begins to do what we call optically mix together. See? And when they optically mix together, yellow and blue in a subtractive paint mixing process creates the color green. Okay. And that's kind of what's happening there. You know, it's an optical illusion. You know, there is in fact just blue and yellow. But when you begin to, you know, overlap them in a kind of a broken passage like that, they begin to optically look green. Now you might, you know, if you can't squint, you may actually have to stand up and take a few steps back from the computer, but you should be able to begin to see that as kind of a green mixture, okay? So the idea, huh?
In reality, if you mix blue color with yellow, can you make green?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, that's what happens.
Is this the technique that they used a few years ago when these 3D prints were being, you know, that was popular kind of things where you had to squint down in order to see the image? Is this kind of what the technique they used to develop those?
Yeah, it's, you know, this actually started back, you know, in Impressionism, okay? Because the Impressionists, that's what they were in fact all about, is what happens, you know, how do you what effect do you get when you lay one color next to another? How do they actually work together, right? And, you know, they had known for a long time that if you mix yellow and blue, you get a green mixture. If you put yellow and red together, you make an orange. If you put blue and, what is it? Or blue and red together, you get a violet, right? So, you know, you're taking primary colors, you're mixing the combinations of them and making what we call a secondary color. And then if you take the secondary colors and combine them with the primaries, then you end up making what we call tertiary colors, right? Yes.
I think my iPad picks up very fine pixelation,
Mhm.
but on the side where it's got the little picture on the side that you clicked on to make the big picture,
Yeah,
I
it
see,
looks-
but I don't see the green in the big picture, no matter how far back I get.
yeah, because it's, yeah, you're too close to it. But here,
And
let's-
it's,
let's
I
do this.
got a really good camera on this
Okay.
iPad.
Yeah, and so you
So-
see, we begin to reduce it, and all of a sudden, oh, okay. See, now it's getting a little bit green. Okay, not as green as over here, but yeah, still green.
Yeah, not green over there. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that's the concept. That's the idea. Here's another way of doing it. Rather than breaking it up into, you know, kind of an irregular pattern, you know, if you take these strips of color, right,
Mm.
and you begin, you know, reducing, you know, the size of them, look what happens. See, smaller and finer they get, you know, the more it looks optically like a solid color. Is it a solid color? No. You know. See, they begin to optically blend, right? And they kind of turn out
Yeah.
something like these. Okay. Now, you know, we watch TV all the time, right? You know, we look at computer screens all the time. So here's basically what's happening. So you've got red, blue, and green pixels, right?
Mhm.
And you know, you take these dots and you have a certain percentage of them in a certain area, and you get, you know, all these different colors. If you kind of squint your eye down, you know, you'll get a yellow, you'll get an orange, you'll get a red, you'll get a kind of a magenta, you'll get a purple, you'll get a blue green, a green, right? And so, you know, the whole thing about pointillism and impressionism generally is about, it's all about the percentage of what, you know, how much red, how much blue, you know, how much yellow to create a color in a particular area of the painting. And, you know, the more of one color dominates over another one, you know, the more it shifts in that direction. So now, you know, using pigment, right? We can actually take and we actually mix those two colors together, right? The primaries. And in that case, if we mix yellow and blue together and we have more blue, we get kind of a more bluish green. If we put a little more yellow in it, we get a more yellowish green, right? If we mix red and blue together, we get, you know, and it's kind of balanced, we might get a purple. If we add more red to it, you know, we'll get a red violet. If we get a little more blue to it, we'll get a blue violet. And then the same thing with yellow, you know, and red. You know, you mix the two together, you get an orange, right? So these are where we've combined the color together. Now here's another way of doing it. See, what would happen if you put yellow down first and then you just did a glaze of blue over it? You'd still get green, right? Same thing here, you know, with red. See, you know, you glaze over it with blue, you little more blue, you know, you get a blue violet, little, you know, little less blue, and you get a red violet. And the same thing with orange. The more red you put over it, the more red orange it gets. The thinner the glaze, the more yellow orange it becomes. Okay, so that's glazing. where this is, you're actually mixing color here, you're glazing here. And then this is kind of what we were talking about with pointillism. See, you take those primary and possibly secondary colors and you begin to make, little dots, right? Or little paint strokes. And again, depending on the percentage of how much blue, how much yellow, whether they overlap, whether one color is laying over another, you'll get these effects of things turning green in this case, right? Or purple, or orange, see? And that's what we call optical color mixing, right? Here's another example of this. Now this is with colored pencil, okay? None of you use colored pencil, right? Okay. So again, if you take two colors, so let's say you take a yellow and then you take a purple and you start, mixing them together, right? This end's got a little more purple, this end's got, more yellow. You begin to combine them and look what happens, okay? And they're direct complements. They sit across from each other on the color wheel. So when you get about equal amounts, they kind of become gray, don't they? And you can do that with any of these color combinations here. See? And so, with colored pencil, you're always putting down a color and then you're going back over and layering another color over it. And when you make that next passage over it, it modifies, that original color. And it ends up being kind of the same thing, where it's how much of the primary color did I put down, how much of the other color did I put over it, and that will affect, how much it shifts. This is another example of, again, pointillism, using, direct complements, and over to the left, it's blue and orange. Over to the right, it's, violet and yellow. And if you, again, just kind of squint down at it, and it's interesting, the shifts in the color that you get, optically, when you do that. Here's another example. And so you see, you can really create, just with those primary colors, red, blue, and green, you can really create almost any color, okay? What you can't do is you can't make them appreciably lighter, without white. And you can't make them appreciably darker without, maybe using a black or mixing a black, Here's another example. Again, how those colors mix optically. See, as they kind of lay over, the red lays under everything, and then either yellow or green or, blue overlaid over that red in certain percentages, and you begin to get, a whole range of different color there.
Did you use white in the all the way on the right?
Yeah, they would have had to have used white to make this lighter.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Like in that previous example, see, they
Right.
didn't really add white into anything.
Right.
They used
That's
the
right.
yellow,
Right.
and yellow will only take you so far to making something
Yeah.
lighter.
Right.
Now this is our good friends Itten and Biren. And if you want to study color, if you really want to study color and what color and optics will do, there's three names that you need to know. Okay. The first one is Joseph Albers, Albers. Okay. Contemporary modern guy who, he isn't alive anymore, I don't believe. But he did a lot of research and study into optics and how colors react with each other, and then how the human brain actually perceives it. And then the other two names are the names at the top of the list here. And that's Itten, Itten, and Bieran, Bieran. And they wrote a book, it was back, I think, in the 20s when they wrote the book. And it was about color theory. And again, it kind of opened up, you know, the scientific aspect of color and how color actually works and reacts. And they did, you know, a whole lot of experiments and stuff, you know, little things like, you know, this grid. If you look at this grid, if you just kind of focus on it, after a while, it begins to move, you know, it's like, you know, little areas shift and turn a little green or yellow, but it's almost like the pattern just begins to kind of move on you after a while. That was one of their experiments. This is another one. You know, again, where they're taking, you know, complementary colors, things like that, putting them next to each other, and really looking at how much they vibrate against each other and how you get like ghosted images. It's what they call after image. Like if you look at this and then you look away, it's like those faces go with you. You see them for a few seconds, you know, after you stop looking at it. Now, why is any of this important? Well, it's important because if you're going to paint, you need to understand color, you know, at least the rudimentary basic parts of color and how to use it. And, you know, here's a good example of a pointillist painting, you know, using primary and secondary colors. Okay. Now they're not using tertiary colors. They're just using the primaries and the secondaries. And look at the range of color and value that they've created. You know,
Wow.
basically just starting with red, yellow, and blue. So you see, you can really do a lot, you know, well, and they use white, and they probably use black, you know, to make some of these darker, or they mix the black. Now, you guys have never seen these paintings, you know. This is Claude Monet, right? Again, you know, Monet was kind of one of the really early impressionists, you know, that started this whole idea about optical color and what color does, you know, when you lay one color next to another. And if you look at any of his paintings, you know, he didn't take a lot of time to sit and mix up a purple or something like that. You know, he would make it by putting a blue next to a red, you know, or he'd make orange by putting a yellow next to red, or green by making a blue and a green and putting them next to each other, so that they mixed optically on the canvas. Okay. And that's how he got the effect, the luminosity in his paintings that he did, you know. And that was one of the key things, you know, why the Impressionists painted the way they did. They were actually trying to emulate what light does, you know, in the real world around them. Now, here's a really beautiful painting, okay? This is by an artist by the name of Henry Martin, and he was a pointillist. I think they categorize him as a Neo-Impressionist. But, you know, you begin to zoom in and look at, you know, how he laid, you know, color next to each other. See, there are no trees there. There's really no mountains, no road. It's just a change of color and value. And, you know, all these little, you know, paint strokes.
Who is that, Charles?
His name is Henry, Henri, Henri, Martin, Martin.
Thank you.
And so, you know, you pull back and see it all falls together into a landscape, right? Funny how that works. Now, here's an example of, you know, this is, again, this is something we look at every day. Now, this is a photograph, but, you know, if it goes through like a commercial printing process, you know, where, you know, they're trying to reproduce a photograph, they have to break it down into what they call CMYK. cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And everything that you see printed, everything that ends up in your mail, magazines, newspapers, anything that's color has been broken up into these little dots. And again, it's based on the percentage, how much white, how much black, how much, blue, yellow, or, well, magenta, yellow, or black, to create all the different color. So when you look at it, at this scale, you see the pixels.
And I remember paint programs on computers where you could go in and modify pixels.
Right.
Yeah.
But you see, you reduce it, all of a sudden, just
Yep.
space. Okay. Now there's contemporary painters working out there today, from this whole optical movement. One of them is this guy right here. His name is Chuck Close. And Chuck Close, you see, it's,
Oh, wow.
it's kind of a photoreal painting, right? When it's reduced. But then when you blow it up, and these are very large paintings, by the way, we're talking maybe 10, 12 feet tall.
Wow.
When you walk up to it really close in the museum, that's all it is.
Wow.
Okay.
I've seen some of those painting competitions, where they have somebody who does the points like that,
Right.
that paints that way.
Yeah.
So now and then you see, wow, that's really amazing.
Right. But you see, this is kind of where it's gone, I mean, that whole study of optics, and, when you put color combinations together in certain percentages, it makes other colors, and then how our brain takes all those little square shapes or rectangular shapes and kind of meshes them all together. And what you end up getting is you get, a full range of value and color, and an image, of maybe somebody's face in this case, right? And then last but not least, there's that little ball, okay, with the three, additive light sources, projected onto it, and the overall effect that you get. And again, notice how dimensional that feels. See, it feels like you could almost reach out there and pick up that ball, right? But notice that, this isn't just gray, right? You've got warmer areas, more, much warmer areas, much cooler areas to the light. And then the same thing goes on in the shadow. The shadow isn't consistently cool. It's not consistently warm. It's got both in there. And to really make an actual three-dimensional feeling, effect, in your paintings, you need to keep in mind the value, the temperature, and the intensity, because you got to get all three of those right to really turn form and make that really feel round. And like
I do have a question. The reason that the lightest area moves forward and not backwards is because of the contrast of the temperature.
No, it's a combination of all three. Okay, whatever area in the painting has the most contrast, the greatest contrast between light and dark, warm and cool, intense and muted, right? When all six of those are together in one area, that's the area that's closest to you in the painting.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope I got it for now.
Okay. Well, that's the theory. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So any of that makes sense to you guys?
There's a painting in the Dali Museum in Spain that Dali actually I guess he studied all this pixels things. And if you look at the painting, it looks like a woman's figure, but you cannot take a photograph of that painting. If you take a photograph, it all of a sudden looks like Abraham Lincoln. I mean, it's the most amazing thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's exactly what we're talking about, is optical illusions. See, when you're closer up to it, it looks, you see a woman's figure. When you back away from it or squint your eye a little bit, all of a sudden you get Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, that's
Well, when you looked at
very
the
well
painting,
done.
no matter where you were standing, you saw the woman's figure. I mean, and the painting is huge. It's up on a wall. So you have to stand way back from it. But it's something about photography and taking that photo. And even if you try to take the photo in a magazine, you're not going to, I don't know how they did it, to put it in a book or something. You're going to get a totally different picture.
Right. Well, because you've reduced the size of it. So you've done the same thing as like backing way away from it. The other way that you can do it is if you just squinted your eye a little bit, it would all sort of fall together and be Abraham Lincoln. So, yeah, but it's, yeah, again, it's that whole optical effect thing. Back around about the 1940s, 1950s, you know, and particularly in the United States, there was a whole art movement. It was called the art movement, and it was all about optical, you know, optical effects.
Cersei, bring it here.
So now we're not going to look at any of those today. We're going to look at some Neo-Impressionists. Let's see how we're doing on time.
I had a thought.
Yeah.
Could we maybe work out something like for our Friday session? If we were prepared with the 3 primary colors and whatever media we prefer, that you could give us little exercises that's what we would do on Friday. That's possible, something like that.
Well, we could.
Good idea.
Yeah. You know, that would take it a little out of the drawing part
Right.
of it. Unless you use colored pencil, that would still be drawing. You know. But you know, if you want an exercise, right? I'll give you an exercise, and it's very, very easy to do, and all of it will be a brain tease for you, which is basically, you know, take a jar or a bottle, something like that, and draw out 3 circles in a row. The first circle, try to paint it and make it look 3-dimensional using only value, you know, dark and light. The next one, do it with intensity, right? And value, you know. So you can modify your values where, if, you know, in your value, you can use a neutral, but you can also use a color and make it like monochromatic. Let's say that we did a red ball, right? Well, that red ball could have areas that are more neutral and areas that are more intense, you know, to make it feel 3-dimensional. And then the third one, use all 3: intensity, temperature, and value, to make it feel 3-dimensional, and see if you can really pull that off. Okay. And
I
that's,
also have a question. Would you go back to that statement, which was kind of a summary that you were telling Bernice about? The areas closest to you in the painting is the one with the highest amount of
highest degree of contrast.
Highest degree of contrast. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to think about that for a while.
Yeah. And so you might want to make a note with that as well. There are how many? 5 types of contrast that we deal with as an artist. Okay. You've got value, and remember, value is, it doesn't have anything to do with color. It's all about how light or how dark something is. Then after that, we have the color itself, or it's referred to as hue, H-U-E, right? Interchangeable word, okay? You can say color, you can say hue. right? They mean the same thing. All right. So the color will affect the contrast, whether it's a blue, which tends to be generally kind of a darker value color, versus a yellow, which is a lighter and warmer color. Then you have what we call intensity, how pure, right? And with intensity, it's called intensity or chroma. Again, interchangeable word. You know, all those mean is how pure the color is. All right, is it really just a pure blue, or has it got a little red in it? You know, is it shifting in some direction, maybe a blue green? So that's in, you know, your intensity. After that is temperature. Okay. Remember in the video earlier this morning, she was talking about a particular painting, and she was saying that, you know, the artist used kind of a warmer blue. It was kind of almost like a aqua or a turquoise. See, so blues, see, temperature is relative. You know, it's always a comparison to what it's next to. Is it warmer than or cooler than, right? And so temperature is a way that you can create contrast. And then the last thing that it's what we call hard or soft edges, okay? Now, I'm not talking about the edge of something at a boundary or a perimeter, like the edge of a sphere, okay? What I'm talking about is the edge between one color or one transition color to another. Is it abrupt? Is it like very clear? Or is it in fact very soft? Does one just sort of gradate or fade into another? The softer it is, the less contrast you have. The sharper it is, the more contrast you have. So it's that how quickly does it transition? Okay?
A question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between temperature and value?
Well, temperature has to do with whether your perception of two colors, one being warmer and one being cooler, right? Value is whether it's lighter or darker.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I come into Zoom and beat John up?
Beat John up? What do you want to beat John up?
Because he's telling you to make us do an exercise.
Oh.
I'm trying to help you, Bernice.
No. Yeah, Bernice, like everything else, you know, in life, it's a choice. John does not have enough power to make you do anything.
There you go. Right.
Oh my goodness, that's new to me.
Not at all.
That's new to me.
Now he's just making a mild suggestion. You can either take it or go, I don't want to do that. Okay.
Charles, would you explain the difference between intensity and chroma?
Well, they're the same thing.
Okay, they're the same thing. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
that's why I said the words are interchangeable. Just like color and hue, H-U-E, they mean the same thing. See? And by the way,
could you explain the difference between the color and the hue? I mean, intensity would be how strong the
how pure it is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, how pure or how grayed down it is. All right, gotcha. That's intensity. Hue or color is what color family is it? Okay, and it can only be one of 6, right? It can be red, yellow, blue, green, violet, or orange.
Hue, a color or a shade.
Yeah, anything you look at, okay, even if it looks gray, it's going to have one of those 6 colors as being more dominant than the other, okay? Which would account for why you see warmer areas in grays or cooler areas, because again, maybe blue is a little more dominant in that gray mixture, or maybe the orange is a little more dominant in it, okay?
Okay, is it possible for us to do an exercise, just a simple landscape to emphasize some of these, like the gentleman suggested that we have
Well,
on Friday? Just a
Well,
simple-
I was suggesting, rather than do landscapes, just do a sphere. Because
Okay.
the whole goal of this is just
Okay.
how to use those ideas and concepts to make something feel dimensional. Okay. Now I'm getting ready to show you some examples of some artists in which we'll talk about, the effects of how they've used color to push things backward in the landscape, or to pull something forward, or how they turn form on an object, okay? So I'm gonna share, and we'll get as many of these as we can, okay? We may run out of time. And
40 minutes almost.
let's start off with George Lemen, okay? We looked at some of his work yesterday. We wanna close this. There we go. Where are you, George? Here you go. Okay. So we saw a painting by, Lemen yesterday. And I think it's in this mix. We'll probably see it again. Okay. But, we watched this little film this morning and we were talking about, color systems, right? What can you tell me about this particular painting?
Well, we have complementary colors between orange and blue. And then the upper part of the painting, where it's orange, it's almost monochromatic except for her hair. That's what I see.
Okay. Yeah. So you're right. It's a complementary, composition. Complementary contrast. Blue, orange. They sit across from each other on the color wheel, and then they've used white and black to modify each of those, right?
Right.
To create a whole range of both value and intensity. So let's.
He doesn't have any soft edges, it looks like, on the body at all.
Yeah. I mean, most of the interior is fairly soft.
Yeah.
The contrast between the exterior, and the background is pretty sharp. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, and even on the flip side, her left side there is really, it's really sharp. It wouldn't naturally be that way.
Well, when you actually look at the whole figure, is this area right here as sharp as, say, right in here? No. See, because again, there's a little less contrast here because the value is slightly darker and more muted in color. And here the color is a little more intense and there's more contrast, between, the back and the front. Overall this being, a light against the dark, where this is kind of a middle tone value against the dark. So it gives you the illusion that this recedes and that this is a little softer. Okay. Again, it's an optical effect, right? Now, did he come back in and actually take a brush and blend these colors together to blur them out? Probably not, But again, because of the value contrast, it seems to be softer than what's happening up here. See? So that
He also used size, because he used size. Her hand,
yes,
behind her head is very small,
and
it gives you another illusion of depth.
Right. Yeah. And in the drawing, and we talk about this in drawing all the time about overlapping shapes, right? So you've got this shoulder here, right? And then this arm, how it breaks in front of the rib cage. And then you get the shoulder blade, which is real subtle, right? But it's sitting back here, and then it seems to be sitting in front of the spine.
Wow.
And then you get the other shoulder blade, and see how it creates that division, that line right there? And how it breaks, again, the rib cage and the torso away from the arm, moving backward. And then this line that breaks inside and tells you that this part of the arm is in front of this part of the arm. And then it's subtle, but how he changes value and color right here at the wrist. See, and it gets darker back here. So it pushes that hand back behind this. So you see there's this succession of forms, one shape overlapping another. Okay. And that's how he created the illusion of a three-dimensional form.
So if I were going to summarize that and using your language, the area closest to us in that picture is the one that has the highest degree of contrast.
Yeah, like right in here. This seems to be the area of the figure that's coming furthest forward, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah, so it's moving, this is moving toward us. All of this is moving back away from us, right? And then the same thing is kind of true with the chair. See, you know, he's got this, you know, this is larger in scale. As it moves back, it seems to diminish in perspective. And then overall, this is darker and more muted. See, so that this comes forward and that moves back. Same thing is true in the carpet. See how he's muted and darkened the carpet here, and as it moves forward, what happens? See, the colors get brighter, more intense, right? And there's more contrast here than there is back here. Okay. So, you know, it's all these little optical tricks, you know, of how to push and pull space. I'm going to move a little bit faster here. I want you guys to look at this. Now here you have, you know, a still life, right? You know, we've all, you know, painted still lifes before. And just take a look at how he's pushed this area back and let this area of the painting move forward. See? And again, it's all about the contrast. See? You know, highest degree of contrast in value, right? Also intensity of color. See, the color right in here is much more intense than back here, right? And so you see he can push and pull space by the use of those 5 types of contrast. But in particular, in pointillism, it's really about the combination of color and how the colors affect each other, its value, you know, light and dark contrast, and intensity, you know, how pure or how muted the color is. Now, if you take a look at this young lady, right? Would you say that you have a 2-color or a 3-color system there?
Red and blue and
Great.
Yeah,
Yes.
3. Red, yellow, and blue, the primary, right? Plus black and white. And look, see, look at the background here. Now, when you look at that, it looks gray, right? But really look at it. You see how it gets much warmer right here and how it gets a little more neutral and cooler here? See, that's what we're talking about, intensity. See, and there's a shift in intensity between this area and this area, right?
Yep.
And this is getting, and temperature, you know, this being cooler feeling in comparison to this, which feels warmer, right? Okay, now is this warmer than, say, the blouse? Between the two, which of them are warmer?
The blouse.
Background.
Yeah, I think the background is warmer.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, in comparison, this feels warmer than this. Okay, so what he's done is comparatively, yellow is not by any means considered a cool color, okay? But is it cooler than this kind of, you know, rusty sort of orange? In this case, yeah, it is. And so overall, this is overall cooler in comparison to this. It's also cooler in comparison to the skin tone. Okay. And then look, you've got this, you know, really intense bright red, right? Against, you know, pretty much so almost white and black, right? And so where does your eye go? Right here, which is where he wants you to look. See, so
Part of the
Yeah.
background that is cooler, he's put a shadow there, so it separates it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's much darker and cooler on this side. And here it's a little lighter and generally neutral, but it's cooler in
Yeah.
comparison to this. Okay, just these two areas. When I compare this to the dark is actually warmer to me up here.
Mhm.
I see a little more red and stuff when I squint my eye down. With this is a little more purple or blue. So temperature wise, it feels a little bit cooler over here. Let's look at a landscape, because Brock was, and I think this is a good example. Okay. Does this painting feel flat to you, or does it feel dimensional? Do you feel like those buildings are set back away from you, or do you feel like they're right up here where the tree and everything else is?
They're set back.
Okay. How do you think he did that?
The intensity is more with the tree in the front. There's more.
Yeah, when you're looking at this area right here.
Color.
Yeah. Yeah, when
Yeah, and even the leaves, on the tree.
right.
Or
Well,
more deep-
he's got a couple of different things going on here. Okay. To get that tree to move forward, okay. Is there more value contrast? Yes. Is there more contrast in intensity? Yes. Okay. Yeah, the reds and oranges in here seem to be a little bit more to the pure red than the rooftops back here. Okay. And then when you look at the overall contrast in temperature, okay, you've got these warm colors in the tree trunk versus these very cool greens and blues and purples and things up here in the leaves. And so again, the temperature contrast is pretty high here in the foreground. And he's carried that through in the grass as well. Okay. Even though there's not a lot of value contrast, the color, generally the green tends to be a little more intense here than it does back here. Now, whether he mixed a separate color for that, or whether it's just because he put in more red in, and oranges and things in percentage next to these greens to make them look more muted, he could have gone either way with that. To me, when I'm just looking at the green, isolating the green by itself, it's maybe a little bit lighter in value than the green here, but the intensity looks, pretty close to being the same. And so the way he graded that down was by the percentage of red that he had next to it. And it just
Did he use, Charles, did he use like a 1,000 strokes? It looks like he's got a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a pointillist painting. It's all just little paint strokes. That was the whole point, is that it's the whole point of pointillism is making a lot of little points.
Okay.
And also it helps that the branch is hanging down in front of one of the buildings to
Right,
make the building go back.
Yeah, it pushes it back. Yeah, because of an overlapping shape or form. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he used the whole bag of tricks here, But, like, look at the shadow side of that building. What color do you not have in there?
Yep.
You got pinks, blues, purples, greens, reds, I mean, it's all there.
Yellow, blue, yeah.
So
Charles, what was his last name?
Lemen, Lemmen.
From Belgium.
Henri.
No, this is George.
No, George.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
George spelled the French way, which has an S on it. If we wanted to butcher French language, we would say George S. But they just say George. They don't say the S. So
And it has an S on his last name?
no, Lemmen.
Okay, Lemen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Only in the possessive case would it have an S at the end of it. Lemens paintings.
He died young.
Yeah, he didn't last real long, you know. But you know, here's one of the portraits that he did. Okay.
Mhm.
Now this kind of actually is an interesting painting in the fact that he kind of reverses and you know, breaks that general rule of intensity. And look how intense the blue is, right? And then you look here and all of these, so you've got a generally cool area of the painting, but the vast majority of the painting is warm, isn't it? And you know, generally they say that warm comes forward, cool recedes. Not always, but you know, that's the general tenet. And in this case, he makes that work. See? Even though this is a very intense blue, you know, he kind of counters that with you know, a lot of very warm, you know, and he groups all the warm colors together as an overlapping shape over the blue, so it pushes it back optically. And then all of this comes forward, even though the colors here are less intense. But again, you know, all of this is painted with these little dots. You know? It's crazy, but true. Here's a self-portrait, okay? I think, let's see, do I have a better one than that? Well, here's a portrait. Now this isn't the whole painting, but this is a close-up. So you notice that the drawing, you know, he used a blue outline. So he sort of drew out his shapes in this blue rather than a black. You know, and then, you know, he laid color next to it, you know, that were complementary to it, yellow, orange, to sort of make it feel more neutral. Look at the hair. You know, and then this is her sister's chin. You know, look at all the different colors in there. When you look at this painting, let me see. This is the whole painting right here.
Oh, wow.
Did he do an underpainting on this maybe before he put the dots on? Would
I
you
don't
think?
Yeah, I think he put a color block down.
Okay.
And then he put the other colors over it. You know, like he may have painted like this shirt. It may have all been like one solid red. And then he put, you know, different mixtures of reds, yellows, blues, greens over it to modify it. Leaving some of that original color showing through, which is why, you know, you call it either an open or a broken paint passage. Yeah, and that's what we're really talking about here. Here's that portrait. This is a better, you know, a better photograph of it, so you get a better sense.
And when did he paint? Late 1880s, 90s?
Well, kind of from the mid 1800s through like the early 1900s. I think about 1917. I think he died just before the World War.
Okay.
Yeah. And he
So
was
1850s?
Probably 1860s through about, you know, no later than 1920, I don't think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And he's what's considered a Neo-Impressionist. You know, I would just call him an impressionist painter. Okay. Anyway, anybody got any thoughts about his work?
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, he did some really nice stuff. Yesterday I showed this painting, and I had a much better photograph of it because I took it from the original painting. This is a really bad, and this is one of the problems with the internet. You start looking at a lot of these paintings, and you know, you look at this and go, yeah, the color is all kind of, ugh. But then you actually see the real painting. It's amazing. You know, just all the color in it. And I showed
Looks like a ghost there.
Looks like a what?
Ghost. The color is not,
Yeah.
like you said.
Yeah,
it's
the color, yeah, the color in this is really muddy.
Yeah.
Hang on one
terrible.
sec. Hang on one sec.
I love a lot of his background techniques, you know, the mixing of the backgrounds. Amazing.
Are these for the most part large paintings?
Kind of medium size, you know. Maybe like, you know, 30 by 40 is kind of the biggest area of it. Let's see. I'll see if I can find that painting for you guys. Right here. I'll just open it. We'll see if we can blow up my computer.
Please don't.
Blow the picture up, not the computer.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying hard here, boy, I'll tell you.
I know you are.
Okay, let's see. Where did you guys go? There you are. Okay, gotta find you guys.
I'm here.
You know. All right, let's that's not here. That's the one. All right, so I'll show you the difference between the photographs I took at the Chicago Art Institute. And all right, so everybody see Maurice Dennis, the tag for him. Okay, good. So this is my photograph of that very same painting.
Yeah, but look at the color in there.
That's
It's
what
not
I'm saying.
dead. It's not dead color like a ghost. That's
Right.
what I was.
Yeah, and then if you zoom in on the glass on the blouse, look at all
Wow.
the color in it.
Love that.
See?
Did,
Look at all those-
did you say yesterday this one was under glass?
It was, yeah. I don't know why they put it under glass. It really made it difficult to photograph. Here's the face. But it's beautifully done. And this is a portrait of his sister, by the way. But you can really see, in my photographs, you can actually see the paint technique. And look how the edge is blurred. See how it comes together, it creates this gray and very soft edge here.
It's very nice. I like your photo much better.
Well, I do too, yeah. But I took it from the actual painting. I was standing
Yes.
right there in front of it.
It
And
makes
so-
a big difference visiting
yeah.
museums.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, just a world of difference. And look how he used this little bit of blue-green under here, just to cool off the temperature. See, it's that turquoise color right in that shadow, and it just really kind of makes it pop. Just really beautiful. So here's the background.
Well, it took him a while to do all of that.
Yeah, I don't think he did it real fast. Yeah, I don't think that this was a couple-hour painting. I think he worked at this one for a while.
Yeah.
It'd be my guess.
So where do you start when you do something like that? Do you block in the figure?
Yeah, I mean, I would, if I were to try to paint something like that, let's go back to the whole painting. So I might put in a general color and value for the background, a general color and value for the dress, a general color and value for the skin tone, just blocks, just like you would block in any kind of olive prima paint. You would just kind of average. Well, there's kind of a skin tone there, and I'm going to mix something, and then you once you have those blocks and you have your composition established, then you go back in and start working on different areas to develop them.
That's what I kind of did with my cactus.
Right. Yeah, you got to start with a shape and color and value somewhere. And it may not be what you end up with, and obviously it's not, because you're going to modify it, but but you got to start somewhere. And so you start off with big blocks and shapes, and then you develop them from there. Okay. Any thoughts about any of that so far?
Mm-mm.
Big difference.
Anybody's brain fried at this point?
No,
No, I wanted to go back and get the third person who worked on optical color research. I have Ippen and is it Behrens?
Biren, B-I-R-E-N. Or no,
B-I,
B-I-E.
okay.
Yeah, B-I-E-R-E-N. Yeah, Biren. They're
Okay,
both,
there was a third person that you
yeah,
mentioned
they're
first.
both German. And Itten and Biren go together because they wrote a book together. Joseph
Okay.
Albers, you know, worked by himself.
Albers, A-L-B?
Yeah, A-L-B-E-R-S.
Okay.
Okay.
Charles, have there been any new theories of color since these that you told us about?
None that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I mean, I think these guys did a pretty good job. You know,
Yeah.
now the actual, the actual optics, and what they discovered about optics hasn't changed. What has changed is the technology and how artists are using that today, such as, Chuck Close, for example, in his paintings. But there are other artists who are working, again, with this whole thing of optics and how light, affects color, and then how do you use that to create an image and to create some kind of effect, right? And later on, here in the next week or two, we're going to look at some more contemporary, abstract pieces of work that are optical art. So you can kind of see how contemporary painters, more contemporary painters are using it. One of the issues that you have in talking about, art and art history, and particularly at times like this, is, nobody can get out and go see what, artists are currently doing. Not a lot of people are going to shows and galleries and things like that. Also, museums are not buying the things that are being produced today. If it's being produced today, about 40 or 50 years from now, they'll start collecting it.
so we had to die first.
Pretty much so. You got to be real close to it, Clifford Stills and all like Robert Motherwell, all those guys who made it, during their lifetime as artists. They basically spent, their like 20s through about their 40s, basically being dirt poor. And then somewhere around about, their late 40s, early 50s, some museum curator decided that, yeah, okay, you got a good body of work here. I think I'll show that. And then they became financially successful. Yeah. There's usually not too many visual artists who start making like a lot of money when they're young. For whatever reason, it just didn't seem to happen. You got to get up there kind of around my age, and then people start paying attention to you. It's like, oh, you made a living as an artist. Wow, how'd you do that? And then they start asking questions and looking at your work, because they kind of figured out by then, if you're still doing it in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, you're probably fairly serious about it, So, we better pay a little attention to you. So let's see how we're doing time-wise. I'm going to get one more artist. Well, we only got 10 minutes. We'll take a brief look, at one other person here real quick. And then, let's see.
And then we will see you tomorrow too.
Yeah, you're going to see me tomorrow. You're going to see me tomorrow afternoon. Who I want to show? Let's see. Okay, yeah, let's try this. All right, we want to close this. That doesn't apply anymore. We want to close this, doesn't apply. And we want to go here. No, that's more. Ah, here we go. All right. All right, so this is Henri Edmund Cross. Okay. Now, he did this beautiful painting that I really loved, and it was very much so like this. It was a beach scene. And it just had a couple of kids, you know, who were kind of, you know, naked on the beach, and they had the beach to themselves. But I want you to, in particular, look at the technique of how he applied the paint. See, again, you know, it's a pointillist approach. But if you will, just take a look at the all the color up here in the sky. And you see he used those colors to, you know, because they're kind of direct complements with each other, to actually neutralize and gray that area of the painting back so it recedes. And so that the yellow down here at the bottom ends up coming forward. And the overall effect is that you get this nice sense of depth in the painting. So you feel like those mountains are across the water from you. And so you get this really nice atmospheric effect that way. But, you know, when you start looking at his work, you know, overall, you know, he really played with color and optics. And so, and particularly on his figures, like this figure right here. Now, this is not as pointillist. And I think this was before he started doing the pointillist landscapes and things. So he was using a broader brushstroke, but look at the use of color, you know, in shifts in temperature and value. See, he rounds this leg out, see, with this, you know, really warm reflected light, you know, into this cool shadow. Okay. And the way he used the brushstroke to move around the form, you know, and to suggest that this thigh is round and moving backward. Same thing here, all through the figure. And then what does he do with the ground? See, again, you know, the direction of the paint stroke, as well as the contrast. You see, you know, yellow against violet, okay, red against green. So he's playing with direct complements. And then look at the reflected light, you know, right here on the face. Blow that up. And, you know, Bob, you were asking about like an underlying color. See how he kind of, it's probably like a yellow ochre. He just blocked in the whole figure and then he put, you know, other color over it.
Right.
You know, but it, you know, at first you just masked it in as kind of a you know, kind of neutral, you know, yellow. But look here at the orange, you know, against this, you know, kind of blue green and the purples. Are any of those flesh tones?
No.
No, but when you stand back, they
Right.
blend into a flesh tone.
Yeah, and what do I keep saying about flesh tones?
They're everything.
Yeah, they could be anything. Because flesh tone is all dependent on the light that it's in. It can look blue, it can look green, it can look orange, you know, it can be all kinds of color in there. You know, because flesh is something that's alive, you know, and it reacts with light.
He lays down a good bit of paint too.
Yeah, he did. Again, you know, this is probably a study. You know, I don't know how large this is. It's probably not a real big painting, but it was probably, you know, like a study or a concept, you know, or maybe something from life that he painted, you know, as, you know, leading to a more finished painting. You know, now here's another figure, you know, male figure, and again, you know, notice, you know, like on the form. See, very neutral to something that's very intense. And you see how that edge right there really pops forward and it really brings that chest and everything closer to us, that and the shoulder. And then how all the rest of this kind of recedes and goes back away from it. And this is this guy, you know, out drying himself off with a towel, you know, after he's been at the lake or whatever. But I really like the way he used color and, you know, on the figure and landscape. Again, you know, look at how he used the color here in the face. You know, these greens against the pinks and oranges. And then the hair being red, right?
Almost outlined the figure by the tree
Mhm.
in blue, and then he did the pointillism after the linear work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And he
On that-
doesn't, again, you know, he doesn't use a neutral outline. He always uses a color. And, you know, Eloise, remember, I think we had this discussion one time in your painting. You know, you were outlining an edge and you usually use like a kind of a dark neutral. And I suggested you use a color instead. See?
Okay, don't remember that, but okay.
Yeah, that was a while back. You know, we were kind of talking about that. But yeah, the outline on a figure doesn't have to be black, you know, or gray. It could be red, it could be green, you know, and it doesn't have to be the same all the way around. It can change colors and temperature, you know, again, to reflect what the light is doing, you know, on the form of the figure. You know, here's a fairly good example as well. Now here it looks like he used, you know, a pretty definite, you know, outline, you know, on a lot of his figures. And, you know, he loses some of the edges, like the lit side of the leg, and he uses that line to reinforce, you know, the overlapping shapes and forms, you know, as he moves down the back of the leg. Yeah. John will love this. This is a watercolor. Now, obviously not a pointillist, but, you know, it's waves and rocks, and look how loose and just kind of, you know, it's almost totally abstract. Now, I hadn't seen this painting before, but it's like the more I look at this painting, the more I love it.
Yeah, really cute, really interesting
Yeah.
subject here.
Well, he's got this little girl, and, you know, in scale, she's much larger than the figures back here. So he's forced the perspective, you know, by really pulling this area forward and making this very close to us. And the interesting thing is, you know, he's used scale to pull her forward, but he wants you to move backward in the painting, right? So look at the contrast and the value here. It's really pretty minimal. You almost lose her, you know, and you go right past her, you know, back here to the ladies at the table, and then further back, you know, all the way back to, you know, this, you know, this distant couple back here. And it looks like she's got an umbrella or something. I don't know. You know, it's just a suggestion that something's back there.
That's really an interesting concept, what he did there with normally you would think the larger figure in the front would be your focal point, but it just brings you right back to the ladies in the grouping there, darker contrast.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he just sucks you all the way back here to the background, you know. And, you know, I looked, you know, when I first saw that painting, you know, I really just kind of look at it like, huh, yeah. And it does. I mean, you just like almost like zoom right past her, you know, right to here. And then from here, he just shoots her straight back into here. And then you just kind of start meandering around in there. But, you know, really interesting painting. Really nice use of color in there as well. Now, you know, obviously he didn't like color much.
Right. He certainly wasn't afraid of it.
No, not in any way. You know, it's like, damn the torpedoes, here we go.
That's Jean's getting her color, Papa.
Yeah. But, you know, he pulled it off really well. You know, just really beautiful painting. You know, the cypress trees and stuff. And here's a little still life that he did. Again, you know, you start really looking at it, it's almost totally abstract. You know, another landscape.
That's nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And then here's his wife.
You can go from one extreme to the other. I mean, that's very muted, very
Yeah, very
soft.
soft. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and really it's a direct complement. You know, it's yellow and violet is really kind of the color system in there. Yeah.
I
But
like how
really-
he got the figures in the dress. Cool.
Pardon?
Say the images in the dress.
Oh, the patterns and stuff.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pattern in-
Flowers.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, here's another landscape with two figures in it, which you almost lose.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Losing.
Well,
So yeah, you got, you know, water reflecting the hill, and then you've got the, you know, the edge of the stream with the trees and stuff.
Mhm.
You know, do trees have to be green? Obviously not. You know? I mean, here they're purple and red and yellow and orange. See? So, you know, you can just take those rules and you can just like throw them right on out the window. Yeah. Okay. But I really, you know, I like what he does because there's a softness to it. You know, because of the way that he painted, you know, in that pointless technique, everything seems to kind of vibrate. You know, the paintings just kind of shimmer. Just a really beautiful effect. Yeah, here's this is called the Undergrowth.
well,
Yeah, trees. Okay. You know, nothing interesting to look at there,
Man.
right?
Wow.
well,
So, and look at all the color. You know, all the pinks and purples and reds and things in the tree trunks. So, and then this is just amazing. It's really gorgeous. Look at the hair. You know, and it's just a woman. You know, God did a painting of a young girl having her hair brushed, and psychologically, it was a bit of a kind of a torturous painting because it looked painful. You know, this, you know, on the other hand, is just totally different, you know, take on it. And it looks, you know, it looked calm. It looks relaxed. You know, it looks like, you know, just a scene that you would see, you know, just a girl or woman, you know, brushing her hair. And look at the hair itself.
Eliminated all of the good facial features that are hard to do and put the hair over.
Yeah, well, he said, you know, hey, I don't need a face. I'm just talking about this could be
I know.
any woman, you know, brushing her hair. And look at
I
all the
know.
color. See, is her hair brown? No, it's purple. It's purple, it's orange, it's red, it's green, it's blue. Yeah.
It's pretty.
It is. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful painting. You know, and very simple, you know, in some ways. Look at the colors in the background. You know, the purples and blues and yellows and greens. See? And here he goes again, you know, obviously afraid of color.
Mm. Love the reflected colors in the body from the atmosphere around her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and you know, he could go and do something like that, and then he does something like this. You know, and this is a portrait. Feels very, you know, very naturalistic. You know, but again, you know, look at all the color.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there nothing is blue, nothing is red, nothing is, you know, gray. It's all these different, you know, primary, secondary colors, you know, layered over each other in a broken or open paint passage to create the illusion of a color. It's all optically mixed. like the
Yeah.
gray on the side of her face, which isn't gray. You know, it's blue and orange and yellow and
Like
purple. and
violet.
everything.
Yeah.
Huh?
Looks like a violet in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does.
Yep.
Yeah, but optically, you know, against those sort of more yellowy orange tones of the skin,
It's muted.
it grays.
Muted down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, I want to show you that version. It's a little brighter. I had the same image that I had pulled earlier, but it was so, the color in it was so bad. And this is what it looks like. You know, it's this, you know, warm, you know, kind of rich color. And the other one just looked like gray. You know? So,
But it's still fairly flat though.
yeah, this is one of the things about him. He did, you know, like a lot of like wall, like for theaters and things like that. And I think this is one of the murals that he painted.
Okay.
So it's kind of almost Art Deco kind of stylized. You know, again, you know, this guy doesn't know anything about color. You know, why are those trees not green? Yeah, it makes you sick, doesn't it? It's beautiful.
It does.
It's just beautiful. Yeah. So, yeah, same here. You know, figures. You know, very kind of classical feeling painting. You know, it almost looks like a mosaic, like it could be on a like a Roman wall.
Pompeii, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. First,
But instead it's, you know, it's just a painting. So anyway, I think we're over time now. Yes, we are. Okay. I'm holding you guys up for lunch. Anyway, before we go away, anybody got anything to say?
I enjoyed this, Charles.
Very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, good class.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good. Got a few gears turning now.
Hey, well, Charles,
Yeah.
we do that somewhat now. I mean, I look at some of the work that you've done, and I've got a landscape, and we use that technique somewhat, just larger dots, you know. But it's great to add that type of color to something with those dots.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The way, you know, whether you lay down the paint in an impressionistic paint stroke, whether you put the color on and then blend it all together, or whether you just use a pointillist approach and leave each of those very distinct, you know, points of color. It's a
Right.
choice. You know,
Right.
it's a stylistic choice. But the thing I want you to get out of looking at these guys and this whole discussion about color is to kind of free yourself of this concept that trees have to be green, that skin has to be pink, you know, or, you know, whatever color you imagine it. You know, it can be anything, it can be everything. It all depends on the light and what light is doing, you know, and the way that you see that, and, you know, how far you want to push it to express it. Okay. And it literally can transform your art if you just keep that in mind. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So anyway, it's been fun. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We will be back here tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow being Thursday. If you've got some things you've been working on, you got questions, you got things you want to share with people, you know, even if it's not your own work. Let's say that you have an artist that you really love that you want to talk about. Send a couple of pieces of artwork in. Okay, it's your time. You know, it's all about, you know, kind of sharing and, you know, your work and, you know, with other people. So it's your forum. So anyway, that'll be tomorrow at 2:00. I'll be back here and we'll see what you send me. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Charles.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you a lot, Charles.
All right. Bye.
Bye.